And so this is why I want to educate the world on their energetic codes is because I naturally was just living in this masculine world. And this is like survival mode, controlling, overworking, afraid to trust. Like all of these things have been my world for so long. And I was just like, I had this huge aha moment going, oh my gosh, I've been living from this place of fight or flight. I've been
Hmm.
living from this place about pushing through. I've been living from this place of not allowing myself to actually just like slow down and heal and tap into this innate nurturing that I actually have within my code. I've ignored it because, yeah, society, like we need to be smart. You need to get straight A's. You need to like get a job. You need to get married. You need to have children. You need to. And we don't need to do anything. We need to just live our lives how we feel and see that make us the happiest.
Welcome to the Daughter with Daddy Issues podcast. Here we get raw, real, and vulnerable. We bring the heart, the mind, the body, and the soul together as we explore the complexities and nuances of the father-daughter relationship. I'm your host, Surzana, and I'm so grateful to be on this journey with you. Follow and subscribe for insightful conversations where we share the spice, the sugar, and the salt, where we share lessons, a lot of laughter, some heartbreaks, and everything in between, where healing and learning becomes a collective experience. This is the Daughter with Daddy Issues podcast for the daughters and their fathers, because your story matters. Our story matters.
Welcome to this episode of the Daughter with Daddy Issues podcast, everybody. I am so excited for the guest that I have today. I am so happy. If you are watching this on YouTube, you can see it on my face. I am glowing with joy right now. I am so happy to have Adrienne Harris, a numerologist from Canada. I am in Canada, Ontario, Canada, and she's in BC, Canada. And I absolutely love BC, but not to digress because I'm really excited. I'm just bubbling right now with so much joy. I have Adrienne Harris with me. She is a numerologist. Help me out.
Numerologist, correct.
Oh my gosh. See, I'm so nervous. I am messing it up. She is a numerologist. Did I do it right?
Correct. Yes.
Correct. A numerologist. She's a self-love and relationship coach. She's a healer, passionate about guiding women on their journey to rediscovering themselves. Her own path started with healing from childhood trauma, understanding her unique energetic code, and learning to balance her wounded feminine energy with an overly functioning masculine. Through this journey, she has embraced her divine feminine power and now helps others heal, align, and step into their authentic selves. What an intro. Welcome, Adrienne, to the Daughter with Daddy Issues podcast. How are you?
Oh, I'm so good. I'm actually super excited for this too. Like I literally have goosebumps all over my body right now. So this is meant to be. This is my gift that I experience when I work with somebody that I really resonate with. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. And that means so much to me. And just from that description of your intro, I am feeling goosebumps because just reading out how you have been learning to balance your wounded feminine energy with an overly functioning masculine, that resonates with me to my core, especially when it comes to father wounds. Like I read that and I'm like, finally someone articulated what I have been going through.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, when we feel that resonance or that energy from someone else or that experience, then that means that, possibly we're here to connect, to talk about these
Mhm.
things. And I always say with people and the whole process of healing is the first step is awareness.
Mm.
Because if we don't have awareness first, then we can't step into the rest of the divine timing cycle, which is about acceptance and self-responsibility.
Mm.
Those are the first three steps that quite often people get stuck in. And then we take action is which is the fourth step. And then the rest of it is about acceleration, transmutation, and integration. So there's seven steps to this beautiful divine timing cycle that I work with my clients. And I myself had to experience this for me to do my own healing.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And to all my listeners, I mean, in the episode description and at the end, we will share how you can get in touch with Adrienne and work with her. Um, she has some amazing gifts to share, and we'll dive into it. So, Adrienne, tell me, where does the story start?
Yeah, so the story starts when I was little, when I was young. Uh, I was abused as a child. Unbeknownst to my parents, they didn't
Mhm.
realize that I was actually being sexually abused. So it started off with an uncle that was inappropriately touching me, and then it went on to his son that touched me inappropriately for many, many years. And I kept everything a secret. I felt ashamed. I felt like if I went to my parents that I would just be, reaching out for them for another, I guess you could say, point of attention. I grew up with a brother that there was a lot of struggle between the two of us when it came to attention from our parents.
Mhm.
And there was a lot of discipline growing up as well too. If my brother and I fought, if we did something that was sort of, I guess you could say, out of line, there was a physical consequence, and that was really hard because things were happening to me that I didn't feel that I could go to my parents about and talk to them about. And there was a point in my life when I did actually share with my cousin, who was also experiencing the same type of abuse from our cousin, um, that there was authorities involved, but back in those days, there wasn't much that was done about it. We're talking like early 80s, and so I kind of downplayed it because, again, I thought that I would be in trouble for doing something that was totally inappropriate. And obviously, he was older than I was. And yeah, so I didn't tell anybody. So, other than my brother, but then my brother was also inappropriately touching me. So,
Mhm.
like it was. I came from this place of, and don't get me wrong, my parents are very loving people. They loved me with all their heart. But I found out later in my life that my mom experienced similar things when she was growing up
Mhm.
and possibly didn't heal that within herself. So yeah, so this is sort of how I believe that, this has created a bit of a father wound with me because our fathers are meant to be in their masculine energy and are protectors. That's what this masculine energy is. And this is why I'm so excited about this conversation because I really think that my life could have been different
Mhm.
had there been a shift within that masculine role in my life.
I'm really sorry to hear that. My,
Thank you.
I wish I could kneel down and hug little Adrienne.
Yeah. I have done tons of years of healing. So it wasn't until I was 22,
Yeah.
I was actually raped in a foreign country due to my promiscuity that further carried on after my childhood experience. And at 23 years old, I actually, through the help of a friend, booked myself into sexual abuse counseling when I was 23. So I've been on this journey for about 28 years, almost 29 years of seeing talk therapy, getting help in multiple ways, self-growth, self-help, coaches, healers, you name it, to help me get to where I am today. So there's been a lot of healing, and I appreciate your empathy that you share because yeah, sometimes my story is really hard to hear. People say because I am a spiritual person, I always say that we do choose our life path and our experiences, and people get mad at me when they say that I chose to be sexually abused because I believe that we are here to take our pain and turn it into purpose, which
Mhm.
is exactly what I do with my coaching and my healing with people that experienced similar or major traumas in their life.
Thank you for sharing that. And if I can ask a couple questions,
Sure.
it must have taken a process to come to this point where you are owning your story.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how difficult, how challenging. And what was it for you that shifted where you went from I am going to own my story and because I even for me like owning my story no matter how many times I've talked about it when I talk about it again and again and again it still reopens a bit of the wounds and it's very difficult. So I'm very honored that you shared that with me and you're sharing that with my listeners. But what was the process like?
I think again, if we take a look at the divine timing cycle, there was awareness, acceptance, and self-responsibility. So I really had to take a look at, when you go through sexual abuse counseling, they talk to you about that it isn't your fault. And I think for me, that was the biggest thing was because I blamed myself for so long
Mm.
because I beat myself up. There was a lot of like, a lot of beating yourself up when you go through that experience.
Yep.
And to really, it had to be a mindset shift and a mindset change. Um, because I think that when we have these experiences, we can beat ourselves up over and over and over again and, and say it's our fault.
Hmm.
But truly, we really didn't have a say. And I mean, one of the biggest things is that I knew the things that were happening to me were wrong when they were happening to me, but I didn't know how to change that, especially when you're a child.
Yes.
You have to think
Yes.
about that experience as a child. We are meant to be protected by our parents or grandparents or whomever is in our life to be there and to guide us. And so going through the healing in my early 20s, I'm so grateful because I actually met my husband during that time. And it was really just about forgiveness. It sounds awful, and I've even struggled with forgiveness for the longest time, especially towards my parents, because I have this belief that you should protect somebody, and or children should not have to experience this. But if you think about it, if my mom experienced something like this, then she wouldn't have known any better. And I also don't think as the woman that she is today that she's done her healing around this. So I truly believe that this experience has happened to me to help heal that generational trauma piece that gets passed down through our lineage. And
Right.
so I hope that that's answered your question is I think there's a lot of forgiveness that needs to happen from within for you to be able to get beyond the point where you can talk about these things and not get triggered by them.
Right. You mentioned something that also really resonated about how our fathers are meant to be our protectors.
Hmm.
And when that's not the case, there might be a shift of the masculine energy. Like we start tapping into our masculine.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
when our fathers, you know, are not able to be our protectors or somehow do not show up as our protectors. And in some cases, like for me, the father becomes a perpetrator because for many women, the father becomes a perpetrator. Um, how do you think that can impact a woman in particular when it comes to the feminine, masculine energies? How do you think it impacted you?
Yeah, well, I think that what ended up happening is I ended up building these walls around
Mm.
me.
Hmm.
And therefore, I became so hyper independent. And that's one sign of trauma is hyper independence.
Right.
It's actually a side effect. And so when we don't feel like we are protected, it's like this fight or flight. And so we
Yes.
start building these bricks of walls around us. And so therefore, I went through life, thinking that my body wasn't mine because
Mm.
it
Hmm.
was everybody else's. Um, and it wasn't until I actually started to get help that I realized that no, my body is mine, and that yeah, that it I have to say that experiencing what you experience has a huge it actually changes the structure of your brain. And I've done so much research on the brain and how these imprints happen. They also attribute to our attachment styles, they
Yes.
attribute to our nervous system,
Yes.
um, because the trauma actually lives inside of your body. And so this is why we come from this place of wounded masculine energy, is because we're we don't feel like we could get that from the people that are meant to be our masculine role models. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And I think a lot of the times, I mean, at least for me, it we don't make a conscious choice that, oh, I'm going to be my masculine. Like, I didn't even know what's a masculine energy, what's a feminine energy until I believe I was 27 and a friend introduced it to me and I started reading upon it and I'm like, "Oh my gosh. I totally have been in my masculine literally all my life."
Yeah.
Like and then it hits you.
hmm
When did you realize that you were being in your masculine? Was there a point?
You know what? It's so funny. So I want to tie the bit of what I do into this because it wasn't until I started to, in the last probably I would say 8 years, when I started to learn about my astrological natal chart
Mhm.
and my numerology. Numerology came to me first, and someone had said, "Oh, you're masculine in your energy." And I was like, "I'm what?" Like, no, I wear like fancy nails and, dresses. What do you mean I'm masculine? And it's not, and that's not it. It is the way that you present yourself to the world. I actually my first I probably say introduction to the metaphysical world, I guess you could want to describe it as that, was I worked with a Chinese feng shui practitioner.
Mm.
And she had said to me, she said, "You're actually yang metal, very strong yang metal."
Mm.
And I didn't know what that was. And she's like, "You need to soften." But there was no talking about masculine and feminine energy. And the more now that I incorporate that into what I do with people, it is about the yin and the yang. It is
Mhm.
about that we have both masculine and feminine energies within us. And sometimes in our specific energetic codes, I see that come up. And this is why I love what I do, because I'm a workaholic. I'm super
Oh,
ambitious. There's so many um, things, like I felt like I needed to provide for myself. I've come from this place of really just trying to protect myself for so long. That is very masculine in my energy. And even in my own marriage for 28 years, I actually lived in my masculine energy and didn't realize it until the marriage fell apart.
wow.
Yeah.
You touched the point about being workaholic and ambitious.
hmm
And I was like, there we go. I experienced that. For me, it was twofold. One, a need for survival, because the masculine is the one who goes out hunting to provide. And there were moments when I'm like, I need to provide for me. I need to provide for my mom.
Mhm.
And then there is also that ambitiousness because I think personally, and I would love for you to share if you had a similar experience or, what would you say to that? For me personally, among other things, my father was not just overly critical. He, I feel like there was a point after which it seemed like he became a bully. Like he was a bully to me.
Mhm.
And it's like, it was almost like he would enjoy my reaction when he would put me down.
Mhm.
And there would be, well, I didn't know it then, but now in hindsight, I can see that a lot of his behavior was very narcissistic.
Yep.
And I think when it comes to emotionally immature parents, when it comes to parents with narcissistic tendencies, sometimes they get into this mode where it's like they're competing with their child, where
Mhm.
it becomes like a clash. Instead of being the adult and the parent, it becomes they're the one like fighting with you.
Yeah.
And when the child, or even as a teen, and even as an adult, we receive that from our parents, we can internalize that and start developing a very low self-worth. And I think for me, my ambitiousness, my drive was always to try to prove myself to him, prove myself to the world, and most importantly, prove myself to myself because I never believed in myself. And I still struggle to do that. And I think the masculine energy with the workaholism, with the ambitiousness, like I'm trying to connect the dots, and that's how I've experienced it. And I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah. So one of the things that I do when I work with people is I look at their numerology. I look at their energetic
Mm.
codes. And it's so
Hmm.
funny that you say that because I'm literally just like in my head going, oh yeah, I know why. So one of the things you need to understand with your father is that a lot of the times when our parents do that to us, because I had similar situation. My mom kind of sees me as competition even now as a 51-year-old woman and she's 75. There, I feel like there's this, popularity type thing that is, it feels like it's a tug and a pull, and that's not me. That to me is ego. And it's
Hmm.
also about insecurity as well, too. So the reason that your father would possibly put you down was because he was jealous. He was insecure within himself. And here he saw this strong, woman who, even though she was getting beat down by her father in a verbal abuse kind of way, you were still standing up and saying, no, I'm not going to take this. And the unfortunate part is that comes down to control. And
Yes.
we have seen this within our patriarchal society for so long.
Yes.
And so this is where we need to really reclaim that divine feminine within us because I
Yes.
looked at your numerology chart and
Yeah.
you are naturally, so I work with a system that is esoteric. And so you are a leader. You are the beginning of something. And so with that energetic code as part of your makeup, you're gonna have drive. You're gonna have this energy that you push forward and you're not even going to realize it. And so this is why I want to educate the world on their energetic codes is because I naturally was just living in this masculine world. And this is like survival mode, controlling, overworking, afraid to trust. Like all of these things have been my world for so long. And I was just like, I had this huge aha moment going, oh my gosh, I've been living from this place of fight or flight. I've been
Hmm.
living from this place about pushing through. I've been living from this place of not allowing myself to actually just like slow down and heal and tap into this innate nurturing that I actually have within my code. I've ignored it because yeah, society, like we need to be smart. You need to get straight A's. You need to like get a job. You need to get married. You need to have children. You need to. And we don't need to do anything. We need to just live our lives how we feel and see that make us the happiest. And that's sort of where I'm personally at right now in my life. So yeah, I can feel that from you.
If you had to give couple advices to a woman who is in that workaholic mode and overworking, and it's almost automatic in her code, like
Yeah.
because she has been doing it for so long, it's really hard to stop. You press the
Hmm.
brakes, you can't stop. What would you
Yeah.
tell her?
So I would incorporate certain things into your daily life, and those would be possibly like spiritual practices. I actually have a masterclass coming up on this. It's about reclaiming your divine feminine. So I'm going to be talking about number one, energetic codes, and B, the things you can do to soften. I also
Mm,
have 5 ways to uh, heal your wounded feminine. Um, that I've put together for people. And it's a place to start. And I think that it's so important to even just recognize what feminine and what masculine energy actually truly is and why we need to allow this feminine energy to come out because this feminine energy is creative.
mm,
It's nurturing. It's about receiving. And so when we come from this place of woundedness it's the complete opposite.
right,
Yeah.
right, right. Yeah, I've experienced the wounded feminine through me quite a lot in
Hmm.
terms of I don't want to say jealousy, but sometimes maybe lack of trust, sometimes maybe extreme emotional dysregulation,
Hmm.
sometimes almost this crippling fear of abandonment,
Yeah.
where I would rather be the one to pull the plug before I am the one who gets abandoned,
Yeah.
which isn't
Yeah.
healthy. But again, it's the wounded feminine because it's
Yeah.
been wounded. Wow.
Well, quite often I talk about when I work with clients is, and I say this and I sound like a broken record sometimes, is we bring our childhood needs into our adult relationships.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
one of the things that I need and I currently have within my partner is I need to feel emotionally and physically safe when I'm with someone.
Mhm.
And so I don't feel this with everybody. And this is one thing that I really wish that my dad would be in my life, but I have to accept the fact that he's not. Because after I started my counseling and my sexual abuse healing is that my dad never came and talked to me. My dad never stepped up as this father figure and said, "Hey, you know what? I'm really sorry that this happened. How can we support you?" This is something that has never been discussed in my family, and it's kind of like, well, that's a you thing and it's not a me thing. And I wish that our whole family could go through that healing process together because taking responsibility for your part in a relationship is part about being a partner and about being a relationship. This is why I'm a relationship coach because when I left my marriage, I really stepped into, you know what? I own my part. I lived in my masculine energy. I came from a place of control because that's all I ever knew. And, I was also very nurturing and whatever else. But the thing is that that was not to say that it was my husband's role, but I stepped into that role and he stepped into a feminine role.
Mm,
And this is where I'm saying with society is if we were just to realize it would help us so much. And so now in my current partnership, um, I actually talk to my boyfriend and I say, listen, I really need you to step into your masculine on this. Sometimes, he'll be like, well, what do you want to do? And I'll just say, you decide, and he is like, oh, he's like, oh, I feel like I want to have a snack. And I'm like, okay, where are we going? He's like, where do you want to go? And I'm like, no, where do you want to go? And he was like, oh, I was wanting to go to, Tim Hortons or whatever and get a tea. And I was like, okay, yeah, that sounds good. And so I encourage him to live in his masculine energy. And this is where we need to naturally step into those roles. In even men, I will share that men have wounded energy as well too, based upon their childhood needs. And so
Yes.
this is why I think this conversation is so important, because the wounded masculine is even having a more difficult time, because when a man steps into his feminine energy, he's seen as, fairy or whatever that is. And I don't think that. I truly believe that you can identify how you ever want to. But I truly believe that understanding this masculine and feminine energy within us, and to have that balance, like if you think about the yin yang symbol, it is about equal energy on each side. And the feminine needs the masculine, and the masculine needs the feminine for us to live in peace and harmony.
Yes, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when a man is in touch with his feminine energy, he'll be able to recognize and support the feminine energy in the woman that he's with.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what I have found in my relationship. One of the things that really, attracts me to my partner is that he steps into his masculine energy. He has a daughter that he doesn't have a relationship right now.
Mhm.
But I talked to him and I said, what was your relationship like, your daughter? And he actually, used to take her out on dates and, all of these types of things. And I was like, this is how fathers should be treating their daughters, because what they're doing is they are setting a standard for their daughters
Yes.
to, when a man comes into her life, if she has a good male role model, then she will be like, here's my list. Here, these are the things that I require for me to be in a healthy relationship with you. And that may or may not come, but I truly believe that if there is a role model for that, then it's going to be imprinted into the child. Just like, my parents loved each other very much, and I saw, the love between them, and they showed me that love too, except for it was a little bit more up and down. Um, but the thing was, is that I experienced that love. And then when I was with my husband, I wanted that love to be role modeled to our son, because I wanted him to see what a happy, healthy relationship looked
Right,
like.
right,
Yeah,
right. And a happy, healthy relationship is not a relationship without conflicts.
absolutely.
So when you see that as a role model between your parents and how they are in that happy, healthy relationship, how they deal with conflicts, you kind of understand that. But then when, things are shoved under the rug, or it's yelling and screaming or throwing things or leaving the house and all of that, subconsciously we take a lot in. But I think
Mhm.
nervous system wise, we also take a lot in. So in the nervous system, it gets stored. And then when we experience that in our relationship, that nervous system memory comes up and then we show up that way. And then it's a whole hurricane and a gong show from then on.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've had conversation about sometimes these relationships, like I felt like my relationship with my dad was literally just like I was a worker bee. My job as a
Mm,
child on the weekend was to help pick rocks and, work around the farm.
mm,
There wasn't this place of, hey daughter, let's go on a date, or these types of things. I also grew up I was born in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, and I also believe that that patriarchal society has also, caused patterns through our generations.
right.
And so this for me is sometimes when we have this masculine energy, we do have a difficult time with being soft or emotional. And this
Right.
is one thing is that there's a lot of people in this world that do not want to feel their emotions. However, our sensitivity is actually a strength that people don't realize, that that is also our beautiful intuition.
I remember when we were talking in our pre-interview call, which was not recorded, but it was such a great conversation. Every conversation with you, Adrienne, has been great. I remember you had mentioned about my numbers somehow
Yeah.
implying that I am a sensitive being.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, so one of the first things that I see within your numerology chart, so let's just talk about that.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk
Yeah.
about it.
So one of the first things I saw, so you gave me your numbers,
Yes.
which is the first thing. So the first thing I look at is, and I want to describe numerology and the energetic code kind of like a Russian doll. So
Mm,
you have an outside energy, and your outside energy is a ruling number three, which where this creativity piece inside of you comes from. Possibly doing the podcast or other things that you do, you feel naturally creative and also expressive. The three energy likes to express itself. So this is a perfect place for you to be. The next thing I look at is your day energy. And so you were born on the 29th. So a 2 plus 9 equals an 11. And
mhm.
so this is where this sensitive energy comes from within you, because that 11 energy, I'm a ruling 11 too in my energy. And so when I look at that, that is where your sensitive nature comes from. And then when we also look at the numbers that are in the combination of your birthday, I had talked about your arrow of the planner. So
Yes, you have.
you have this beautiful 1, 2, 3 energy in your birthday. And this is your ability to plan things out. After our little interview, you were like, okay, I'm taking notes. And then, you emailed me with all the Zoom links and all these other kinds of things. And I was just like, oh my gosh, you like to plan things out because it's naturally how you're wired. And then you also have a 36999 in your chart. And this is your arrow of mental thinking. I have this in my chart as well too. And so you're extremely smart. There is a component of you, and this may come from a place of, as a child, if you had this 1, 2, 3 in your chart and you weren't supported, like I wasn't, then I struggled as a child with my learning. Um, but you also have 3 9s in your chart, and that is the 9 is the humanitarian. And I had talked to you about this, and you kind of looked at me in a way that you want to help people so much. It is the humanitarian. You want to help people so much, but you probably go to the point of over helping them where they take advantage of you.
Right.
And that is really hard. And this is why understanding your energetic code, so that when you get to that point of possibly over helping someone, that you get triggered, you can say, oh gosh, you know what? This is part of my energetic code. And how can I pull that back? Not to say that I want you to stop being who you are, but it's almost like this awareness piece within you so that when you do overhelp somebody, you don't beat yourself up because it is part of your natural code. You are meant to help people in your own specific way. And we all are. And so this is where I say to people is, you are worthy of everything that you want in this lifetime. And sometimes we don't feel like that, especially when we've been raised by parents or fathers that um, didn't show up for us in the way that we wanted them to. Does that make sense?
It does. And I'm so grateful for those things that you have said. Is it normal to be an adult and when somebody is giving us positive feedback or sharing things which are positive in us or strengths within us, is it normal to feel like, oh, no, 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 especially if you have grown up with a very critical caregiver?
Absolutely, yeah. So the thing is that I love to share people's natural strengths with them because I think these are the things that we need to celebrate and we need to
Mm,
cherish. So for myself, within my own personal chart, I'm missing the emotional plane, and I'm a super sensitive person. So I was brought up constantly being criticized that I'm
mm.
too sensitive, or I used to cry a lot as a child, and I used to get berated by that because um I didn't understand my sensitivity, and this is why I think numerology should be part of school curriculum
I
is
agree.
is
I agree.
because if we could actually understand our children from an energetic standpoint, how amazing would this world be? Because we would be able to say, oh, okay, well, these are the really cool things about you. And actually, one of the things that I've done is I have now seen my sensitivity as my frickin' superpower. And so I want you to see yourself in that light and say, you know what? No, this is actually my superpower, is to be able to help people from a place of without ego, without expectations. And you know what? If I just want to help someone, then that is who I am. And this is part of my energetic code. And I'm going to celebrate that part about me.
That is very hard to do in a world where we have been shamed
Yes.
for from the beginning
Hmm.
about being sensitive. And sometimes when in school, for example, if we are being bullied, even within family dynamics, we're being bullied, we're being demeaned, we're being literally just someone is just belittling us and demeaning us and being verbally abusive to us as well. And that natural reaction that comes out, and then you're like, oh, you're so sensitive. You can't take a joke. And then over time, we develop this shame that, oh, maybe I am a sensitive person. And it's very hard to own it to ourselves. How would you advise somebody how they can overcome that shame?
Yeah, so one of the things that I love to do, so I am a highly sensitive person or an HSP, I like to call it.
Me too.
And
Yes.
I actually recommend people reading books about this highly sensitive piece within us because you can find books out there, and I actually have one posted on my Instagram, or I think, about being highly sensitive because it was until I owned that piece of myself to say, okay, you know what? I am a highly sensitive person. We navigate this world in a very different way than the rest of everybody else. And then also, people don't even understand that they're highly sensitive.
Yes.
And so, this is where I would say this will help you with not beating yourself up so much. And it's also one of the parts of our energetic code. So when I add the numbers of your birthday together, usually the numbers that make up your ruling number have to do with sometimes the empowered or disempowered side to us. So for myself,
Mhm.
I'll just use my numbers, is I have a 2 and a 9. And that 2 can be very insecure, it can be very needy, it can be codependent.
Wow.
Right? Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. And then I have 9 in my energy. And so that 9 can be, that's the part that I love about myself is I need to give back to humanity. So it's the humanitarian, but it can also be very idealistic.
Mm.
And it can be sassy and stubborn sometimes. And so these are the parts
Mm.
that I have come to terms with myself about. Um, and I can feel myself when I'm getting too needy, or I get into a place of, coming from this, things should look this way. But those are really, truly just the stories that I'm telling myself. And so, really understanding sometimes and really checking with myself, and this comes down to mindfulness, which is part of what I do with people, is for you to take a bird's eye view sometimes of how you're being and go, okay, do I feel like I'm living in an empowered or a disempowered state? And usually what ends up happening is that our triggers are truly there to show us the things that we need to heal.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
They really are. They really are. And I think sometimes triggers are also a sign of when the boundaries are being crossed,
Yeah.
when our boundaries are being crossed. And I think especially when we have gone through extreme adverse childhood experiences, the example that you shared of what you went through. My
Yeah.
heart goes out to you, Adrienne.
Thank you. I,
It
I appreciate that.
it really does.
Yeah.
I think as a child, when we experience things like that, it can really disconnect us from our body, and we can lose a sense of agency or
Mhm.
understanding when we have agency. We can lose a sense of what boundaries are, or recognizing that my boundaries are being crossed right now because we are so used to having them crossed all our lives that we don't even
Mhm.
know when it's happening.
Yeah.
What are my numbers?
So you're ruling number three in your Pythagorean numerology, and your underlying energy is a one and a two. And so that one is actually the ego. And so the ego is here to protect us, and it is keeps us in fear. It keeps us in lack. And so, or it can also be an innovator or a leader. And so, like I said, like each one of us has this. You also have that too. So you could have the same thing as me, that neediness, that insecurity, that codependence. Or you can think about it as connection or collaboration and being in that supportive energy with someone else. And so these are the things that I love to teach people about because this is where our strengths come from. This is where we can understand our path and this ability to use this as a powerful tool. Like every time I meet with somebody, I actually just met with someone the other day and I said, "Oh, can I get your numerology?" And she was like, "What do you mean?" And then all of a sudden I started to show her all of these amazing paths. Like she's super psychic. She's super cool. She's just like we were talking and she was literally finishing my sentences as I was saying them. And I was just like, whoa, you have like superpowers. And she's like, yeah, but I didn't really understand them until I started like showing her numerology. And she was like, whoa, this is crazy. And I'm like, yeah, I said, you have a ton of strengths, and I need you to really start leaning into those beautiful things and sharing that with the world and stop hiding yourself because we're all here to embrace that beautiful parts of ourselves, even though like I've gone through, a lot of experiences in my lifetime. I'm here to help people heal. Through my own energetic code, I found out that I'm supposed to be a spiritual teacher. And I was like, I'm a what? And this was about 8 years ago or 9 years ago. I actually sat in on a workshop where there was a numerologist, and she said, "Okay, let's calculate your ruling number." And at that moment in time, I was actually had a property services company, so I was babysitting rich people's homes
Oh,
for a li
wow.
for a living. Yeah, and I had a successful business, and I found out that I was a 2911. So I'm a master 11 in my numerology code. And I was like, okay, I'm supposed to be a spiritual teacher. And I was like, how am I going to get there? And all of a sudden, soon as my soul found out my ruling number, my life did a 360. Like literally years later, my husband and I sold our business. I went down the path of lifestyle and wellness coach because I needed to do a lot of healing from my overworkingness and living in my masculine energy, which burnt me out and practically I won't say almost killed me, but I had a lot of problems with my health and all these other kinds of things, and I didn't realize it in the time. But now that I'm introspective and I look back at that time in my life, I'm like, oh my gosh, it was because I was living in my masculine energy that I got sick, that I got burnt out, that,
Wow.
all of these types of things, because we have to remember that our physical body, our emotional, and our mental body, they're not separate. They're all intertwined. And quite often, what happens when we've got all of these things going on in our head, they usually show up in our physical body first. Yeah.
Oh, there. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, how can people get in touch with you? Because I feel like people need to get in touch with you.
Oh gosh. So you can find me on my website, adrienneharris.ca. I live in Canada, so I
Yay!
have a .ca website. You can find me on social media. I hang out on Instagram and Facebook, just under Adrienne H Coaching. That's me. And I have a beautiful workshop. I love doing free trainings. For me, it just helps me when I teach things and when I experience these types of things within myself and I put them out to the world or to the collective, is that when I go through and I teach these things, these are actually things that I also need to heal at the same time, or that I've done the healing on, then I want to share that with people. So I have a beautiful workshop coming up on February the 11th called Reclaiming Your Divine Feminine. And it is really just about understanding these parts of ourselves that I think that we've locked away based upon our experiences in this lifetime. And yeah, I just want to help people. I'm a humanitarian, so yeah.
I have a couple last questions to ask, and it might touch a little bit of our vulnerability sides, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
How do you think your inner child or your inner self wishes your father showed up for you?
Hmm. I wish that he would have, been more empathetic. I believe that he also lives in this wounded masculine energy. And so when he doesn't know that or how to connect with his feminine side, this is what I wish that I would have gotten from him. But I also have to accept the fact that I don't and I won't.
How do you think, if he had showed up a particular way, how do you think that, like, what way do you think he could have showed up for you that as a child would have helped you feel safe to go to him when those extremely terrible things were happening?
I would possibly say, you know what, just taking the time out with me to talk and connect. And again, it comes back to that empathy. It comes back to, just feeling that nurturing from him. I felt a lot of, sort of nurturing from my mom growing up, but my dad was so focused on trying to provide for our family and, pay the bills and work. He worked very hard his whole life. And I can definitely just say, even just taking me on a date or going for lunch or taking special time out for me to make me feel seen and heard would have been what I wanted.
And what advice would you give fathers or father figures on how they can show up for a daughter or a little girl in their lives so that little girl can feel the ability to go to their father or their father figure?
hmm I would say drop the walls.
Hmm.
Yeah, I would say
Mm-hmm.
drop the walls and also come to terms with your own healing and understanding of you bringing your childhood wounds into even raising your child. I know that my dad brought his childhood wounds into, the raising of us kids. We were raised with a very iron fist. And we have the ability to change those things in our lives. And I know for a fact that my husband and I raised our child very differently than how I was raised. And I never laid a hand on him.
Hmm.
And I think that that makes the biggest thing is take a look to see how you were raised as a child, and you do not need to repeat the same things that happen to you when it comes to raising a child. And I truly believe that this is a moment in our time, in our evolution, that we have the ability to change those things.
When your partner talks about his daughter and their relationship, because you did mention that he takes or took his daughter out on dates, just hearing that, I felt a bit of grief within me.
Mhm.
I never went on a date with my father. The only times he probably took me on a date was because he needed to discuss some form of contractual thing he wanted from me.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel when you hear that?
You know what? To be honest with you, I have so much admiration for who he is because that shows me his integrity. It shows me who he is as a person. He also has a very big role in his grandson's life, which was a huge thing for me when I heard that experience. I literally looked at him and went, "Who are you?" Because how that person shows up in their life is gonna be how he shows up in our relationship too. And so this for me was so important, especially, after dating in my midlife, which is very challenging, by the way. I started dating when I was 48 after I left my husband. Um, I really needed to align with someone that had similar values and had the things that I was looking for. And yeah, it just brings me so much joy to know the person that I'm with.
Wow. The courage it takes to go back into wanting to find love and be found by love after all those heartbreaks. I have immense respect and admiration for you, Adrienne.
Thank you.
For my listeners who are wondering, what's that background noise? I sincerely apologize. I'm actually in a library right now. I booked a room and I had no idea that they're going to have this event. So, my sincere apologies to Adrienne and to anybody who's listening. We are almost at time. I guess I want to finish by asking you, why do you think it's important to talk about daddy issues?
I think that if we don't talk about this, then things are going to continually just be swept under the rug. And so by talking about these things and getting vulnerable, it is part of our healing. It is part of us saying, you know what? The buck stops here with me right now. Because if you truly step into this vulnerable piece, this is how you heal. If you cannot step and be vulnerable with possibly, say, a counselor or a coach or someone in your life, then the healing process can't start.
And that's why I'm doing this. That's literally why I'm doing this. Adrienne, it's been such an honor and a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. And for all my listeners, please, 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 please reach out to Adrienne because I firmly believe part of reclaiming our part of reclaiming our healing journey is finding our strengths. And from our numbers, from our energetic code, if that can shed some light, which after my conversation with Adrienne, it really does, please reach out to Adrienne. I will have her contact information in the description below. And again, thank you, Adrienne, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me and having this candid conversation. I think it is part of the process. So thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Hey, y'all. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Daughter with Daddy Issues podcast. I am so thankful that you were here. We hope our candid conversations have resonated with you or simply provided a moment of connection. If you enjoyed our show, don't forget to subscribe, rate, or leave a review. I welcome and invite you to share your thoughts, feelings, stories. If you're interested in having a conversation or being a guest speaker, please email me at thedaughterwithDaddyissues@gmail.com. Or you can follow and DM me on my Instagram handle at thedaughterwithDaddyissues. Please stay tuned for the next episode and remember, you are not alone. Because every story deserves to be heard, especially the ones with some sugar, salt, and spice. And I thank you for being part of my story. See you soon.